My name is Kora Clark. I'm 28, and this past weekend, my parents made me cook and clean for my sister Madison's birthday party. 50 guests the entire weekend, completely alone, prepping food for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, and by Saturday afternoon, I was so exhausted I could barely stand. And when I finally asked my mother for help, she didn't just say no, she laughed. And then in front of the room full of guests, she said, "You're the only one without a real job. You have the time." Not knowing that I had just signed a contract worth more than my sister makes in a year. And what none of them realized was that my new CEO, Christopher Hayes, was standing in that room listening to every word. And 2 weeks earlier, it had started with a text from my mother at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday saying, "Madison's birthday is coming up. She's busy with a big case, so I'd handle everything. 50 guests, details to follow." Not a question, but a directive. And I stared at my phone in my tiny apartment surrounded by 3 monitors displaying the brand concept I had been refining for Meridian Corporation. The initial presentation in 4 days, working 16-hour days, living on coffee and focused intensity. And when I tried to explain I was in the middle of a major project, she replied before I could finish, "Honey, you work from home. You have flexibility. This is what family does." And that word flexibility was always code for your work doesn't matter as much as Madison's. Just like last Christmas, I had cooked for 23 people while Madison mingled accepting compliments on her career. And at her law school graduation, I designed and printed 200 programs, stayed up all night making centerpieces, only to hear my father tell someone Madison organized all of this herself. And when I quietly mentioned my contribution, my mother patted my hand and said, "Well, you had time to help, didn't you?" While I had an urgent email from Meridian about a final review meeting in 4 days. And still, I texted back, "Okay, send me the details," because that's what I always did. And when the grocery list arrived at midnight, 3 pages long, appetizers, full dinner, dessert, from 4 stores, Madison wanting everything elegant but approachable, I drove to 3 grocery stores before my workday, presenting to Meridian's executive team via Zoom Thursday morning, while downstairs, ingredients waited. And Christopher Hayes appeared, mid-50s, sharp suit, presence commanding, complimenting my brand narrative, arranging an in-person meeting despite my family obligation, discovering my father was Robert Clark, old college friend, and realizing at the party that he'd been negotiating my $240,000 contract. And then Saturday morning, 7 a.m., I was in my parents' kitchen since 6, prepping vegetables, marinating meat, setting up coffee, Madison arriving at 10 in silk pajamas, asking for last-minute keto alternatives, champagne, while I ran errands, assembling caprese salads, prime rib simmering, guests arriving, 50 strangers in clothes I couldn't afford, my parents and sister ignoring my work, performing amusement at my exhaustion, Christopher Hayes watching discreetly, noticing my labor while my family dismissed my career as little freelance projects. I handled appetizers, conversation, and dirty dishes, feeling invisible yet capable, until a kind stranger noticed my professional skill, my mother steering her away, Madison glowing with accolades, me in sauce-stained apron, Hayes observing, my contract email glowing in my phone, $240,000, more than Madison earned, standing in the kitchen being told my work wasn't real, watching my family praise Madison for her legal achievements, while I balanced preparation and service, realizing the cost of flexibility and invisibility, observing the pressures of Madison's career versus my own, the stress of partner review and judgment from Mrs. Patterson, dealing with manipulations and expectations, the endless one more thing scenarios, my voice rising in exhaustion, asserting boundaries for the first time in front of all 50 guests, the confrontation with Mom and Madison exposing years of undervaluation, walking away calmly, professionally, asserting my career and self-worth, leaving the kitchen, ignoring frantic calls and texts, receiving Aunt Susan's updates on the chaos post-departure, discovering Hayes stayed to talk to my parents, informing them of my contract, professionalism, and talent, finally seeing my family confronted with the reality of my achievements, receiving confirmation of my new role as brand director with a starting salary of $180,000 plus bonuses, the respect for my boundaries, my work, and my abilities validated, Madison facing the consequences of her assumptions, my parents realizing the underestimation, and I finally stepping into my car, driving away for the first time without looking back, asserting self-respect, embracing recognition, independence, and the freedom to focus on my own extraordinary path, proving that talent, determination, and boundary setting are as important as anyone else's success, and understanding the cost of being capable is often being expected to be endlessly available, yet the reward is realizing your value, demanding respect, and receiving the career and recognition you have earned.